Wringer Chapter 31. Henry. Thinking back, Palmer recalled that as the gang was leaving the house that afternoon, Henry had rushed back in, claiming he had forgotten something. Henry, whose streak, unlike Beans's, was meek, not mean. Who ran with Beans and Mutto, who did what they did but was different. Who Palmer had seen one day pulling his little sister around the block in a wagon. Henry had done it, fingered the word into the icing. Tonight. It was a warning. Something was going to happen tonight. Something not good. But what? As he smeared over the word with a dinner knife, Palmer thought about it. The only place he would be at night would be in his room, in his bed. If something bad were going to happen to him, that's where it would have to be. It must have something to do with Beans and Mutto. Or the cat. The cat had already been slipped into the house. Maybe this time, tonight, they would slip themselves in. They'd already done so once. And lately, Beans, especially, had taken an interest in Palmer's room. Palmer, acting put out with his parents, kept insisting he was not allowed to have visitors upstairs. This, however, had not prevented Beans from climbing the stairs to the bathroom no fewer than 3 times during the party. Palmer considered phoning Henry to ask him directly, but that felt risky. Left to his best guess, he decided the warning meant that he was to have visitors that night. Considering the guy's recent suspicions, it did not take a genius to figure out that the purpose of the visit had to do with a certain feathered roommate. He went upstairs to feed Nipper, who had returned from his daily wanderings. While the pigeon pecked at nacho pieces, Palmer sat on the bed to think the whole thing through. It occurred to him that he could close and lock his window and thus keep them out. It was a simple solution, but it also created its own problems. The guys might keep banging on the window all night until Palmer answered. Foiled at Palmer's window, they might get in other ways, other windows. They might wake up his parents. And most important, with the window closed on a hot summer night and no one answering their taps on the pane, they might well become more suspicious than ever. Nope, the window had to stay open. He had to let them in, and that meant, of course, that Nipper could not be in the room. Neither could Palmer. He thought about it. They'd go downstairs. They'd hide in the dark. He did not think the guys would search the whole house. The target was his bedroom. And what could he say next day when Beans asked him where he was last night? He could say it was too hot in his room, so he slept downstairs on the sofa, or even better, he stayed overnight at relatives. The moon was beaming outside his window when a happy thought came to him. This whole thing could turn in his favor. Once they saw for themselves that there was no pigeon, or evidence of a pigeon, they might drop their suspicions. They might believe him. They might back off. So maybe, crazy as it sounded, it was a good thing that they were coming. Palmer had no trouble staying awake in the dark. He was too nervous to sleep. At last he heard his parents' footsteps coming up the stairs. 10 minutes later, the brick crack under his bedroom door went dark. He waited until he thought they were asleep. He turned on the flashlight he'd brought up for this night. Nipper was up at his usual spot on the closet shelf. When the light beam struck, the eye facing Palmer went from buttonhole slit to orange button. Otherwise, the bird did not move. This was normal behavior, Palmer knew. Nipper would be easy to handle. When he settled down to roost, he went into a dopey trance that firecrackers could not disturb. Palmer stood on a chair and, cupping his hands, gently lifted his forbidden pet from the shelf. Holding both pigeon and flashlight was tricky, but Palmer managed to tiptoe downstairs without waking up the house. At first, he sat on the sofa with Nipper in his lap. Still feeling unsafe, he went behind the sofa. He turned off the flashlight. In the utter darkness, he felt himself to be nothing but ears and fingertips. He could feel Nipper's heartbeat, put-putting away behind the toothpick ribs like a tiny motor scooter. He could feel the cold, golden gaze of the trophy pigeon 2 rooms away. The silence of the house at night was not total. Somewhere a clock was ticking. Cricks and creaks came from nearby and distant quarters, as if the house were twitching in a sleep of its own. Palmer tried to aim his hearing upstairs. He held his breath as long as he could, listening. Was that a window screen opening? A footstep? He pictured them in his room, shadows dark upon dark, Bean's penlight like a starflake moving in the darkness, pointing at the bed. He's not here! Pointing under the bed, shining on the bookcase, the basket room, the desk, the closet shelf, the empty closet shelf, the closet. Oh no, the closet floor, the honey crunchers. He'd forgotten to bring them downstairs. Would they see them? Would they figure the cereal was Palmer's for snacking, or would they guess the real reason? He thought of going up, because maybe they were not there. Racing up the stairs, grabbing the cereal box, racing back down. 10 seconds was all he needed. He could do it. But what if they were there? What if that creak he just heard? He stayed put. He crouched and he cringed behind the sofa as if neither furniture nor darkness were enough to hide him. He stayed through 1,000 talks of the unseen clock, and another 1,000, and the bongoing of his heart, and only when he heard from behind the house 2 sharp, quick yelps did he know for absolutely sure that they had been there. And even then he waited for another 1,000 talks before he allowed himself a deep breath, and at last, sleep.